Okay, I think I'm live. I think there's about a 13-second delay from when I speak to when you guys hear me. So chat, like type something if you can hear me, so I know that you guys can actually hear what I'm saying. Hello, by the way, it's Darlene. Oh my gosh, Andrea, I know, I don't want there to be any technical glitches, so I'm just waiting for the chat that you guys are seeing me. I'm waiting. Let's see if I can cover anything before. I don't want to say anything unless I know you guys are there. Coming to you from my new craft room. I have printed out all of the, oh, yes, I'm so glad somebody can hear me. Okay, yay. I printed out all the questions that I got on my post, and yay. So I'm going to start with those, but feel free to ask any questions in the chat window, which is to the right of the video that you're watching. Yay, I'm so glad to hear everybody can see me. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first question, which is from Bonnie. And she said, how can I lighten a finished dry watercolor or gelato project? With gelatos, if you've already used water on them and they've dried after that, then you can't lighten them up. They're pretty permanent. You might be able to do a tiny little bit, but they're going to be pretty permanent. For watercolors, though, pretty much all watercolor, you should be able to lighten it up a little bit by just using plain water, even after it's dried. I actually did a little test on this just to make sure. I did a test on my Peerless and my Gonzai just to make sure that you could lighten them up, and you can just use a lot of plain water. So you dab it with plain water and then take a tissue or paper towel and then just put it right on top and lift it up, and then it'll be lighter. So that's the first question. Okay, and if you guys have questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. Hi, everybody. Oh, wow, you guys, there's people everywhere. Okay. The next question is from Jax. Did I write Jax? Jax. Okay. How do I color with Stampin' Up! Markers and a blender? I think my column got cut off. Okay. How do I color with Stampin' Up! Markers and a blender pen so it looks well blended? My coloring always has streaks. When I use Stampin' Up! Markers and a blender pen, a lot of times I will use regular paper if I'm doing something really small. But if it's a bigger area, like I'd say if it was only like this big, then I would probably use regular paper. But if you're getting something more like this big, I would use watercolor paper, because the watercolor paper is not going to dry very quickly, and it'll give you time to spread that marker out, because the Stampin' Up! Markers typically dry pretty fast. So what I like to do is do a direct to paper. So I take the Stampin' Up! Marker and I draw on the watercolor paper, then take your blender pen, start in the colored area and start moving outside the colored area. If you're looking for something a little bit lighter, like you don't want the dark color of the direct to paper, then you could just pull, using your blender pen, pull it up from the lid of the Stampin' Up! Ink pad and then just color on your paper there. But if you want something that's going to blend better, then the watercolor paper will blend better. I hope that's kind of what the question was. But anyway, okay. Next question. Connie, I know you're there, Connie. I saw you texting. When are you going to incorporate Zentangle in one of your cards? So this is something that I've seen so many times in so many different areas, and like areas like craft stores and all over the place, not just for cards, but for art and things like that. And it's just so cool. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but you kind of draw, and like you could draw a flower and then you do little patterns with a black fine marker. And it's a really cool look, and you can color it too, which is really neat, pretty. And I've been wanting to do it. It's just one of those things that has not been on it's been on my list, but it just never, something always comes up that takes priority over it. But it is something that I definitely want to do. So at some point, I will incorporate it into a card, because it is very cool. Okay, next question, Connie again. What different ways do you use Easy Tack repositionable adhesive spray? I also wondered if we should be spraying it outdoors only with a mask on. I am way too lazy to go outside with a mask and all that. I just put it in a box. Actually, I do it on my craft table. So I just put a box But I'm not, when you use the spray, you don't really need to be holding it down. Like, you shouldn't do that. You're just like, just kind of, you know, very light-handed with it. And it will smell a little bit. It doesn't bother me. When I was a kid, we used to stop at the gas station for gas, and my dad would put down the windows, and all the kids would stick their head out the window and smell the gas. My husband thinks that that's insane. But I kind of like the smell of that sort of thing. But if it bothers you, of course, bring it outside. But I don't know if you need to go as far as putting a mask on. Okay, so as far as using it, I use it on the back of stencils. So you could put it, like, spray the back of your stencil so that when you put it down, it doesn't move when you're trying to apply ink to it. I find that it's kind of a pain to do that because then it always remains sticky, and which is good because you're always trying to put it on top of something. But since I discovered that technique of actually, so you have your stencil here and your paper here, is I flip it over and I tape the back of it. And since I discovered doing that, it's much easier and cleaner. And then I just peel the surgical tape off. But another thing you could do, and I've done this before too, is if you have a sentiment die cut and it's kind of intricate, you could put it in the box, spray the back of it, and then, you know, put it down on your card. But it is repositionable, so theoretically somebody could take it off. But anyway, those are the uses that I've personally used with that product. Okay, nobody has any questions so far. Love the smell of the gas. Okay, well, I'll go to another one because I do have quite a few here. Okay, this is a really hard one. I was thinking about this one. How do you find inspiration for your cards? Well, I do a lot of thinking. I think all the time, almost to the point, I don't know if I'd say obsessive, but I once saw an interview with Eminem, the rapper, and he was talking about how he just thinks about rap all the time. Everything he says, everything he does, whenever he reads something, I mean, he's just wrapping everything in his head because he's always trying to think of a rhyme to it or how he could say it a different way so that it rhymes and raps and all that. And so I kind of relate a little bit to that, in that, like, whenever I see a flower, I'm like, oh, I could do that. Or if I see a color combination, I always keep that in my mind, or I start thinking of a card I might be able to do with it. So I do a lot of thinking offline. I also subscribe to, you know, different vendor blogs like Simon Says Stamp and Ellen Hudson and Avery L and things like that. And I'll occasionally see a color combination I like or a technique I want to try. And I usually start with that, but generally when I start with something, it's not usually what I end up with. And I do sketches and things like that. But I also I'm sorry, I was like reading the chat instead of answering the question, so I'm just gonna ignore the chat for just a second. So no, I forgot the question. Okay, so when I'm thinking, I think in the shower a lot. And what I do is I visualize. So I think, okay, I think about the card in this color. I'm like, no, that doesn't look good. Then I think about another color. I'm like, maybe this might work, or a different layout or something like that. And I really just think about it in my head. And another thing is, some people are going to find this a little strange, and some people might find this wonderfully normal. I don't know, but I kind of feel like God speaks to me. And he puts these ideas in my head because I feel like I could never come up with something like that on my own. And sometimes, on occasion, it has brought me to tears that I have gotten this idea that I have no idea where it came from, and it could only have come from God. So I give him a lot of credit for the ideas that I come up with. Okay, next. Well, actually, I'll read if there's any chat. Is spray adhesive repositionable? Yes, I have tried to use it to stack die cuts to make them thick. I don't know about the stacking thing because it may not be sticky enough to really adhere the layers. So you may have to use glue for that. But yes, it is. You could put it in one place and then move it to another. Do you do all of your edits on your videos? Would you mind sharing tips? Yes, I do all the edits. And a lot of times, like when I do a real-time card, it might take like 30, 45 minutes. For the more complicated ones, like a pop-up or something like that, I usually record 60 minutes. And sometimes that's not even everything, because I'll turn the camera off, do some stuff, and turn it back on. And sometimes I try one thing and then I'm like, it doesn't work, and then I try something else. And so I cut that part out. If it wasn't for the editing, I don't think I could actually do all these videos, because I do cut out a lot of stuff, especially the repetitive stuff. But I use iMovie, and it's really, really easy to use, and actually comes free when you get a Mac computer. And then I cut it into chunks, so like you could break it up into little bits. And then, so if I have a whole bit on coloring, I'll leave the first part in real time, and then I'll like chop it up into a section where it's finishing the coloring, and I'll fast forward that. And then right at the end, I stop it and slow it down a little bit so that you have a nice smooth transition from one thing to the next. Let's see. What other tips about video editing? You know, between takes, like between bits, like little chunks, I do a transitional fade. And I think that really helps it to stay nice and smooth and not choppy. So I would say that's a good tip. And then I also have music in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear it, because when I'm doing it on my Mac, I can hear the music in the background. But then when I upload it to Vimeo and, you know, the web-based video viewing stuff, I can't really hear it very well. But it's nice because with iMovie, it'll bump up the volume if you're not talking. And I always do a voiceover. So I do everything on my craft table, edit out the audio so there's no audio, and then I chop it up into pieces and all that stuff. And then I put the voiceover over, so I watch it and I talk while I'm doing it. And sometimes I probably do maybe 20 different sections of talking. I stop, I'm like, no, I don't want to say that, or, you know, go back and do it over again. So it does take quite a bit of time to do one video. Anyway, so hopefully that, Kathy, answers your question. Could you post some of those vendor blogs on your site, maybe your favorite 3? Yeah, maybe I'll make a note to write that in my next post. How about that? That was Catherine. Let's see. Have you finished putting all your supplies away? Yes, pretty much. They're put away, but they're not totally organized. I'm not sure how much more organized I'm going to be able to make them, because like all my, you know, my dies are kind of all disordered. I want to have them sectioned like sentiments and all this stuff. I mean, like little things like that. Other than that, pretty much, like if you want to see back here, that's one side. This has my inks and my Big Shot and my cutter, everything on it. There's some pictures on the floor I haven't hung up yet. And then behind me here, this is my craft table, and I have a little project on it that I'm working on for Wednesday. And then I'm going to move this just a little bit because I was getting these errors when I was trying to move this last time, and I don't want to screw anything up. Anyway, so there's another countertop you can see behind that, and that has a sink, and there's a clock. I don't know what I'm going to do with that clock yet, but like hanging stuff is not, it's not figured out yet. And then I'm going to raise this up a little bit so you can see my fixture. I think if I turn it on, it's going to mess up the video, but you can see the fixture right there. But most of the stuff is put away. So I'm going to do a tour soon. I will. Okay. How much time does it take during a day, week for you to devote to your card making designs? Oh, that's Connie. Connie always asks the hard questions. The thing is, I do designing all the time, like I said, you know, like in my head all the time. But I probably I spend probably, if it's really fast, I'll get a card out in 45 minutes. And then the second time, and that's the first one, okay? The second time I do it on camera, and it changes a little bit, like I make things a little bit better. I might move the sentiment or change the color a little bit or something like that. So I guess that's sort of part of the design too. But a lot of it is editing the video, recording it, editing it. Sometimes I'll be recording it and then something goes wrong and I have to start all over again. Those are frustrating times. But it's a lot of technical stuff behind the scenes. And I was really surprised with starting the subscription site, how much time I spend on like customer service, dealing with PayPal issues and, answering questions about that and failed payments and contacting people and all that stuff. So that's not really a fun part. But I do spend quite a bit of time, whenever I drop the kids off at school, whenever I have that alone time, that's when I try to spend designing my cards. And I almost always sketch something beforehand, because when I just go to my craft room, if I were to just go to the table and have nothing, then it would be really frustrating. Oh, that brings me to the other part of the question that Hannah asked. She said, how do you find inspiration for your cards? The second part of her question, do you ever find yourself in a creative dry spell? And yes, I totally do. And it happens not really that often. It used to happen a lot more in the past. And I don't know, with experience, maybe it doesn't happen quite as often, but it definitely does happen. I mean, there'll be times when I'll drop the kids off at school. I'm like, okay, this is going to be such a productive day. I'm going to design 4 cards today. And that'll be for 4 weeks. And then I can focus on all these other things that I want to do for the site, because there's lots of other functionality that I want to add and I need to tweak and things like that. And so I might spend the whole day and come up with nothing. And if I end up spending the whole day and coming up with nothing, then that's sort of a bad decision on my part, because once you figure out that you're not going to be coming up with something, you shouldn't waste any more time. So now I've sort of learned, like, if it's not coming to me very easily or at all, then I need to just stop and walk away, and it's just not a good time. So it's not always going to be a good time, and you just put it away, because it's probably not that urgent, and you can put it away probably for the rest of the day at least, and then pick it up the next day. Maybe think about it, and that's what I like to do, is I like to visualize and think, and I can just sit there and just look into space and just think about cards. And I do that a lot, and that really helps me to come out of this, out of a dry spell. It's because I think God's putting thoughts in my head. Okay, so let's see. Darlene, are you a stay-at-home mom? Pike and Ike. I know Pike and Ike. What is that username? I can't remember your name, but I know that username. Pike and Ike, are you staying home? Yes, I am a stay-at-home mom. I actually used to be a programmer, and I worked for Yahoo for 10 years. I was in the IT industry for 17 years, and I have a degree in computer science. And I did product management, program management, all sorts of things. I had a pretty good career climbing, corporate ladder climbing career. And then when my daughters were 8 and 4, I decided to stay at home with them. So I've been at home with them since 2008. And I think having this blog has been really, really important for me, because it's given me something that's also sort of part of who I am, being in technology. And so I really enjoy it. And that's why I think this whole creative thing, I am a technical person. So I was never creative, ever. I mean, I copied everybody. Everything I did, I would just find something I like and I case it. I mean, that's how I started with the card making too. And I would always try to draw. I can never draw because I just can't come up with anything original. And then all of a sudden, I guess it's experience, or I don't know, that I just was able to start coming up with my own ideas. And anyway, so it just sort of grew from there. So I'm really blessed. I feel very happy to have this in my life. Okay. Oh, I have to scroll up. Okay, good. The music is soft and not distracting. That's perfect. That's what I want to hear. Oh, Christmas music for holiday cards. Hi, Jackie. Oh, Carol, you like my light fixture? Maybe I'll turn it on. Okay, I'm going to turn it on really quick. Let's see if you guys can get a good view. It's just a big, massive light, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to turn it back on. I think you can see it better without the light on. Anyway, which watercolor paper do you recommend for the Zig Clean Color markers, Cheryl? I really don't think the watercolor paper it is unique, or I don't think one watercolor paper works better for a certain kind of medium. At least in my experience, like when you're doing the watercoloring, I tend to use the same watercolor paper because I like the results of that watercolor paper no matter what I'm using on it. So I like to use, my favorite watercolor paper is the Strathmore 90-pound watercolor paper. It's got a texture on it, but it's not too textured. It's lighter weight than the typical 140-pound Strathmore watercolor paper that a lot of other people use. And I found that when you use a thinner watercolor paper, because your watercolor is going to get worked. And so, like, if this is my watercolor paper, here's just another, and this is my card base, okay? Well, here, this is watercolor. So if this is my card base and this is my watercolor, and this is one of my experiments with the rice. Anyway, so if this is thicker and this is thinner, then the thinner one is going to take the form of the thicker one, if that makes sense. So if you have a thicker watercolor, your card base, which is going to be generally regular cardstock, is going to take the form of the worked watercolor paper because it's thicker. So that's why I like to use a thinner watercolor paper. I've used the Canson XL Mixed Media 98-pound watercolor paper, which is actually thinner than the Strathmore 90-pound watercolor paper. And the reason why I use that is, A, it's a little bit thinner and it works well if you're not using a ton of water. And then also I use it because it's very white. So my main complaint with watercolor paper is that it's not white. It's all kind of off cream. It's almost white, but it's not quite white. But if you're going to mat it on top of white cardstock, I like it to be white. The Ranger watercolor paper is very white. It's extremely white. But I find that it's thick, and I also find that it shreds very easily. So if you put too much water or you brush it a little bit too much, it starts pilling up and it's just harder to use. So my favorites would be the Strathmore 90-pound and then the Canson XL Mixed Media because it's a little bit wider and it's also thinner and 98-pound. Okay, let's see. What do you generally do with all the cards? And you know what, Andrea, that is a really good question. Because I've got a lot of cards and I try to send them out, but I have a lot of cards because I create 2 every time I do a video. And I really can't keep up with sending them out. So I've sort of been thinking about taking them all and packaging them and bringing them to like a nursing home or something like that. I also will donate them to like my kids' school charity auctions and things like that. I've had thoughts about possibly, you know, giving away to people like on the site or something like that. But it's one of those things that it's just sort of not very high priority. Just there's so much to do on the site that it's one of those things that just sort of drops on the priority list. So it is something that I need to figure out what I'm going to do about. Anyway, so I don't really have a very good answer for that right now. But when I do come up with one, then I will share it with you. 2 questions. Is this being piggy? Do you like Simon Says inks or Stampin' Up? That's a good question. If I had to choose, I would choose Stampin' Up inks because, and what are the plus and minus of each? Hi, Amy. I know that's Amy. I know, and the foil, I'm getting to the foil. So Simon Says stamp inks don't stamp as crisp as the Stampin' Up inks. So you'll stamp them and then they sort of like the edges spread just a tiny little bit. I'm kind of a perfectionist, but when I stamp my Stampin' Up inks, the edges are very, very crisp. I mean, they're very edgy versus kind of spreading a little bit. You see the same thing with the Hero Art shadow inks. Those spread just a little bit. However, I do think some of the colors in the Simon Says stamp line, the Stampin' Up lines don't have, like if they have a color that Stampin' Up doesn't have, then I go for the Simon Says stamp. The one other thing about the Simon Says stamp inks that I don't like very much is that they're harder to clean. They're harder to get off your stamp. So not just that they stain the stamps, which they do. Stampin' Up also will stain your stamps. But I find that the Simon Says stamp inks well, like you almost can't get it off. So, and some of it, if you stamp in another color immediately after you clean it, you might get like residue from the previous color. So I have found, like when I was doing my little palettes of samples and I was doing one after another and I kept having to clean the stamp in between and stamp a new color right away, I had to use StazOn ink to get it off. And you think it's clean and it looks clean, and then I'd put the StazOn ink and then I'd use a baby wipe and there'd be all this color on it. So I do like their colors. I do use their inks a lot. I think they're good for backgrounds, especially because, you know, they're a little bit more, they're not as crisp. So with a background, it's not a big deal. And I do like a lot of their colors. So, but, and the Stampin' Up! Inks are very easy to clean and they give a nice crisp image, but you do have to use Stampin' Up! Paper. Somebody recently asked a question about that, and I put a link to a post that I did several years ago. And the comparison of the Stampin' Up! Inks on the Neenah paper versus the Stampin' Up! Paper was sort of hidden in one of my card video posts. So it's the monkey one. So if you just search monkey, it'll come up. But I actually did a little test of Stampin' Up! Inks on regular paper and Stampin' Up! Paper, and there was a significant difference in the quality of the stamping image you get with the cardstock that you use. Okay, so the foil, I just really don't like foil. When I first started, I saw it, you know, when it first came out, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so cool, it's so pretty. And so I bought all this foil, and then I couldn't get it to work with anything that I had, like all the adhesives I had. So I had to buy all this special deco foil glue and, you know, special adhesive sheets and all that stuff that they recommended. And then some of the foil would work with the products that they were supposed to work with, and some of them wouldn't. Like the rainbow one, I had a really hard time working with the rainbow one. The plain foil, like the silver and the gold foil, seemed to work better. And so, of course, what you're supposed to do is buy the machine, but I didn't want another machine, and I didn't want to spend money on something that I'm only going to use for foil, and knowing that I'm not really going to be foiling that much. So I've got so many other things that I want to do that I didn't want to buy a machine. So I did create, Amy, I still have it. See, I tell you, I've got so many cards. So here's the one card I created with the foil. I don't know if you could see, but this has like little mini stars in the foil. I used an adhesive sheet and I put the foil on. And what I try to do, I mean, there's no machine here. So it's just, this is an adhesive sheet, and then I put the foil on top, and then you peel the foil off and it sticks to the adhesive sheet. And I did the same thing with the sentiment here. But, you know, it takes a couple of tries before you can get it right. I mean, I don't know. It's really just not my thing. I'm not going to do foil. Okay, so that's the end of my foil. But if you want to watch this video, if you're interested in foil, then you can use this. But if you really want the look of foil, then you should just buy the foil machine, the Mink machine, because I think that's the only way you're really going to get some good quality foil cards. Okay. Anita. Hi, Anita. Any advice for those of us who always want more products and then find it hard to use them? I have that problem too. I want pretty much everything, and I know that I'm not going to be able to use everything. So I keep a wish list, and so when it comes, and I don't order a lot. I try to order, you know, periodically, but not every week. Okay, so if I see something I like, I'll put it on my wish list. And then when it comes time for me to place an order, then I go through the wish list. And a lot of times the stuff that I put in the wish list that I really thought I wanted at the time that I put it there, I'm like, I don't know if I really want it. I'm not sure how many use it. And I found these other things that I'd much prefer to have. So I think maybe the secret might be spreading out your purchases so that you don't keep buying when you want something, and you give yourself some time to think about it. And I also think about how often am I going to use this? Like, for example, the foil machine. I know I'm not going to create that many foil cards. So I might think it's cool and it'll allow me to perfect my foiling technique, but then I'm really not going to create that many foil cards. So is it really worth the money to buy the machine? That's why I didn't buy the machine. But like if I'm buying a stamp set, I try to think, you know, I'm always thinking, how many ways can I use this stamp set? Are there multiple stamps in this stamp set that would allow me to create different kinds of cards? Like, for example, that My Favorite Things, The Whole Herd. I love that set so much because it has so many different animals in it. So there's so many different cards you can create with it. And the sentiments in this set also help you sort of figure out what a card could look like and the different cards that you can make with the set. So I like sets that have a lot of sentiments in them too. But anyway, I mean, I guess that's my biggest tip would be to kind of spread them out. And what I also do is when I get a new product, I actually have a drawer for this. It's like this bottom drawer down here. So when I get a new product, I put it in the drawer, and when I use it twice, then I move it to a permanent storage location. So that way I always use everything. Well, sometimes it stays in there for so long, I just have to move it because I'm just never going to use it. That happens occasionally. So it's not like I use everything I buy because, you know, everybody makes mistakes. But I think that really helps me so when it starts building up and I see all this stuff in my to use drawer, I know that I need to start using and stop buying. So maybe that'll help you. Let's see. Okay. Oh, Jackie, you're so sweet. Thank you. Let's see. Sorry here, I scrolled down and it like went to the bottom or something. Okay, here we go. If I'm going to stamp a background, what kind of ink is best? Dye, hybrid, distress, chalk, or pigment? So many choices. Okay, that's Allie. Hi, Allie. I tend to use dye inks for my backgrounds because when you're using a background stamp, it's a pretty big stamp, and I find pigment ink harder to clean than dye ink. I don't use my absorber on pigment ink because it doesn't absorb into my absorber, it just sort of lays on the top, and then if you don't clean it right away, it hardens on your absorber. And so I, for my backgrounds, like to use dye ink. I don't really use chalk ink anymore because they dry up so quickly. I had some and it dried up, and so I quit using chalk ink. And I do like pigment ink, but it's too messy for my backgrounds. And distress, I don't really stamp. I don't really stamp with distress inks. I use that mostly for techniques. I'll occasionally stamp, like I did on Friday's card, where I stamped and then I watercolored on top. But for the most part, I really don't use the distress inks for stamping. But anyway, so dye ink is what I would say. Have you thought of designing your own brand of stamps or dyes? You know, Maui Grits, I have thought about it, but I probably thought about it several years ago, but I can't draw anything, and I have no idea how I would do that. I mean, sometimes I'll be doing something, I'm like, I really need a stamp for that, and I can't find one. And then I'm like, I could create my own, and then I'm like, I don't have time. So I think the bottom line is I don't have time. B, I don't think I could come up with it, but maybe, I don't know, maybe in the future. That's okay. Okay. Let's see. There's a paper called Arches Text Wove that is thin but takes watercolor extremely well. Okay, thank you, Diana. Maybe I'll try that. Arches Text Wove. Is that the brand? You can tell me if that's the brand. Okay. Okay, yeah, send me a sample. Email me and we'll talk about it. Okay. Darlene, you should package up your cards by 10 or so and then give them as gifts to your friends. I know. I do. I give them to teachers like Christmas time and things like that. I do that. Amy, you made a card recently with the distress markers and pads. I wonder if you could try the same card with Stampin' Up! Inks. I don't need to buy any more paper. Okay. So Jackie asked that question. I don't think it's going to work because once you stamp with Stampin' Up! Inks, it really does not like to blend. The distress inks, you stamp them and they're much more water-based and they react with water, whereas the Stampin' Up! Inks are much more permanent. So if I were to stamp I could stamp with the Stampin' Up! Inks, but that ink that I just stamped is not really gonna blend. I would have to add more color, like by picking it up from the lid or something like that, which is why you don't see me watercoloring with Stampin' Up! Inks very often. I hate foil. DSP is designer series paper. That's just Stampin' Up's pattern paper line. Oh, sorry. That was already answered on the chat. Sorry, guys. I know this is kind of the bad thing about the chat is I have to take a minute to just read this. Sylvia, could using your Copics or Spectrum Noirs to color in watercolor paper dry the marker out? I don't think so. I've never tried Copics on watercolor paper. I wonder if they would spread out too much. I don't know. I've never tried it. So maybe if somebody has tried it, you could chat. You can chat us and let us know how that works. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go to, it looks like I've answered all the questions online so far in the chat. I'm going to go back to my paper here and answer a few more. Okay. Okay, Connie. I know we have all collected a lot of stuff over the years. Some of it we would want to keep, and others we would not mind selling. Could there be a way that we could do this among the Live Love Cards community? This has come up before, and I thought about it. I put it on the list, but then other things kept pushing ahead on the priority list. But it's definitely something I've thought about, and it's just I was thinking that it would be not a marketplace, but more of a Craigslist kind of thing where you could post something that you have, that like a picture of it or whatever, and then have some contact information that people could contact you about about buying it from you, and then you guys would have to kind of on your own figure out the PayPal or payments solution and shipping and all that stuff. So it is something that I've been thinking about. If you guys have thoughts on it, like if you think that would be just not a very good idea, then tell me. But I thought it would be kind of a cool idea because I know we all have lots and lots of stuff that if we were to just go, cross and, sell each other our stuff, you wouldn't have to buy anything probably because you're probably ready to get rid of some of the stuff that you have that's been piling up. But anyway, so it's on my list, and maybe I'll prioritize it higher if more people are interested in that. So let me know if you are interested in that. All right. Okay, Carol asked me if I've tried the glass bead gel or the glitter embossing paste. So I actually went and grabbed it. So I have, this is you can see this. This is snowflake paste. One of you guys turned me on to this. I can't remember who it was. And you can say so in the chat. Sorry, I'm not giving you enough credit. So this is the snowflake paste. And this is the Faber-Castell glass bead glitter gel. I've had this for a long time. And actually, when they first came out with it, you couldn't get it anywhere because there was some kind of manufacturing problem with it. And so it took them a really long time, like I want to say a year, to fix it. So if I open this and show it to you, actually, you know what? I'm going to show you the other one first. So this is real paste. This is paste with glitter. So there's so many windows in my room that I had to buy shades. I'll share my fabric sample with you in a second. So if you can see this, I don't know if you can, but it's like paste. I mean, it just comes out like paste, okay? That's this stuff. And this I would definitely use on a stencil. I've used it on a Christmas card. I used it on a Christmas card last year. I took my palette knife and I just sort of spread it across the paper, and it was snow. It's very, very pretty. The glass bead glitter gel, this is like, it's like glue. So if I put my finger in it, it's really sticky. Like I would never put this on a stencil. So I'm like pulling it out. It doesn't even come out barely. I mean, there's some on my finger, but not like what I got with the paste. The paste is very loose. This is very sticky. You could put it, like I think the reason why I had this out is because I was practicing so I could show you. This, I don't know if you can see this, but this is good. This is what you get with the paste. You see how it kind of pops up and it's all hard? This is what you get with the gel. So it's almost like a shiny sort of glittery thing. And it's pretty. I prefer the paste because it's just something that's easily, you can work with it a lot easier. And this is just really sticky. I have never used it. And that's basically it. I haven't used it because I just haven't had a good way to use it. Maybe I could put it on a die cut, like cut something and spread it all over it or something like that. Or I think if you're, I don't know. I'd have to experiment with a little, but the little I did use of it, I really didn't like it that much, which is why I haven't used it. But I do like the snowflake paste. Okay. Let's see. Yes, you're doing great with Shelly. Oh, thank you, Maui Grits. I did once, and my Spectrum Noir dried completely out, though I'm not sure. Oh, okay. That was about using the alcohol markers on the watercolor paper. You can see the beads when it dries clear. You can see the beads. I can see the beads. It's fine. I don't know. Maybe I'll use it. Oh, and it washes off fine underwater, but it would stick to it though. I don't know, maybe. Okay. I'm going to let you guys chat about that and you guys can read it, but I'm going to go to the next question. Oh, it was the foil, Amy's foil question, which I already answered. And then, okay, this was a good question. Terry, this just came in actually. This is my last question on the sheet. So if you have any other questions, put them in the chat so I can answer. My question is about lighting and shading. Is there an easy way to know where to shade and where to highlight? Oh no, actually there's one more question after this, sorry. Okay, so what I don't know if this is gonna work, but I thought I might be able to illustrate this. This is a cup and I have a flashlight here. So I don't know if I could, depending on, there's so much light coming into my room that I don't know if you can see, but okay, so what I do is back it up. You could pretend like you're looking at the paper when you're looking at me. And so my light, like I'm you and I'm coloring right here. My light's always coming from over here. So if it was me, my light always comes from this back corner. I don't know why that's the way I do it, but that's the way I always do it. I think everybody probably has a habit of where their light comes from, and their light always comes from there. So mine comes from here. And so you can see when the light's coming, it's going to hit it right. See where my light is right here? Let me get where it actually is. Okay. See that light spot right there? That's where your lightest area is going to be. Okay. So you can just go up and down that one part of the cup, and that's where your lightest area is going to be. Now, when you think about it, it's going to get darker and darker as you move away from that light. And you're going to get more dark on this side than the other side because you've moved further away from your light source. Okay. So I'm just going to turn this off. So the light was like right here. So what I do is I use my lightest color here. Like if I had 3 Copic markers, I would use my lightest marker here. Then I do medium to here. And I might go a little heavier on the medium, but I'm not going to go dark over here. Okay. So I go light from here to medium. And then going in this direction, I'll go light, medium, and then dark. And that just gives it a nice perspective from the side. You could certainly have your light directly in the center and then have an equal, medium and then dark on both sides if you want to do it. That's just not the way I do it. I don't know why I do it that way. That's just the way I do it. But anyway, I don't know if that helps you, but this applies to pretty much any object. So, a bear, with his belly sticking out, I have my light coming in on his belly right here, and then I go to medium on this side, and then I go to dark on this side. So I don't know if that helps you, but that's how I do it. Okay. Don't forget about discussing various watercolors. Like, wait, what do you mean, Connie? I need another chat about that. Okay. While she answers that, I'm going to do the final question that came in before the chat. And it's from Stampy Cat. I'd be interested in knowing how you keep your wafer thin dies sharp. Mine always seem to work great when I receive them, but after making about 10 passes, they start sticking to the paper and it's harder and harder to separate the dye from the paper without damaging the image. Okay, this is like, what you have to do is get a dryer sheet, and you put, okay, so you got your acrylic, you got your base plate, your acrylic plate, your dryer sheet, your dye face down into the dryer sheet, so like you're cutting the dryer sheet, and then your acrylic plate, and you run it through. When you do that, it creates kind of like a waxy film on your dye, and the paper just falls right out. But I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's true. As I use my dyes more and more, the paper just gets inside the dye, and it's really hard to pop out. But if you use a dryer sheet to put that waxy film on it, your paper will just fall right out. And that's easy to do. Oh, let me show you I think I put it in here. My sample, here, my fabric sample for the shades. I put it on my Instagram. If you saw my Instagram, it's just kind of a grayish, silvery. It's called Silver Gauge, I think. It's kind of a big pattern, but I have 7 windows. So, and I didn't want to spend the money. I was going to make them. But then I decided it was just going to be so much work to make them. And my husband is the one who convinced me to just buy them. So I found a place online to buy them from, and we'll see how they come out. I should get them probably in the next week or so, and I'll put them up. Okay. You can put wax paper in between the dye and the paper too. That's true. I've heard of that, but I've never tried it. I've only done the dryer sheet. I have a real problem stacking die cut. Everyone seems there's a trick to doing this correctly. Yeah, Amy, I think you asked that question on the blog, and I didn't really have, I think other people had more of an answer for you than I did. I don't really do a lot of die stacking, but if I did, I would use 2-way glue pen and or Tombow Mono multi-glue, one of those two. Or you could use the Ranger multi-medium or multi-matte medium, whatever that is. And squish them all together. Just kind of dot it across, put it on top, dot it across. I wouldn't use adhesive, because you need that wiggle room. You got to kind of, because it's got to be exact, right? So you need to be able to move around a little bit. So anyway, probably, you know what? I take it back. I probably wouldn't use the 2-way glue pen because that dries too quickly. I would use the Tombow Mono or the Ranger. Okay, Connie, all the different watercolor types on the market, which do you prefer? Peerless is more translucent, and Gansai Tambi seems more opaque, which I don't like as much. It depends on what I'm going to be using it for. If I'm doing something detailed, like let's say an animal, then I like to use something with like a pen or a marker. So I would use my distress markers, or the Zig markers, or Inktense pencils, and spread the color out with water. If I'm doing something bigger, like if I'm doing a background, I consistently use my Gansai Tambi for background. I really like to use those for background, because when you're covering a bigger area, they are more opaque, which means that you'll get more colored. It's easier to get more color in the background. If you wanted a faded background though, then Peerless is also good. I mean, so the thing is, I love all my watercolors. I mean, there's really not a watercolor that I can think of that I have that I don't use. Do I? I think I use pretty much all the water in just different situations. So I like all of them. I don't need any more though. I definitely would say that. How do you decide what goes into your cupboards, Pike and Ike, with glass doors, and what goes in your closed cupboards? Well, that was kind of hard to figure out, because I have a lot of messy stuff. Like I'm not a super organized person. I mean, I'm organized, but I don't like to spend a lot of time on organizing. So I'm not going to create labels for everything. I'm for all the ink pads and put everything in separate pockets and label all the pockets. And I mean, I have everything in its original packaging. Like all my stamps are in their original packaging. I have solutions to where I don't have to create labels for my ink pads. So for my glass, I tried to put stuff that was definitely, that looked prettier up there. But like in the first cabinet here, I have all my embossing powders, and they are in Glad Tupperware containers, so it's not pretty at all. And they're labeled with a Sharpie in my handwriting when I was just quickly writing it. So those are kind of messy, but the thing is, it doesn't have to look that pretty to me. There's not really anybody coming in here except me and the dogs. So not very many people are there, although I am going to do a tour for you guys. So I should probably be a little bit selective about what I put in the glass doors. But like I put my distress paints, I put them all in a row so they look nice and pretty. I have some of those Pico embellishers and I put those in a row. I have some boxes that I got from IKEA that are solid colors. And so I stored like extra adhesive and things like that. And I put that on the shelf. But it's really not, I mean, it's not like that girl from the Stamp and Storage video series, Keisha, I think her name was Keisha, where she had like everything perfectly laid out with all the different rainbows of colors. And it was so pretty. It was like a store that she was shopping for all of her project supplies every time she started a new project. So it's not like that. And all my paper is in a drawer. I don't have it all displayed. And I like it to be kind of clean. So I don't like a lot of junk out, like on the counter. So I'm trying to put everything away. And I don't have a lot displayed. I do have the inks and stuff over here on this countertop, but for the most part, I have a lot of my stuff in the drawers. Okay. I think, is that all the questions we have? Okay, well, it's been almost an hour. I guess we're kind of done. I want to thank everybody for participating. I don't know how many people are on. Oh, 80 people are on. That's pretty good. Can you put more pictures of your craft from the site now from different angles? Yes, I need to. I know. I was waiting to get my shades in. Once I get my shades in, then I feel like it's a little more complete. And actually, I was thinking about doing like a little, I've been doing all those series. And if you have ideas for more series, let me know. I've got an interesting card for Wednesday, so I'm excited to share that with you. But I was thinking about doing a storage series. So I know I'm more of like an easy storage, like I said, where you don't have to put a lot of work into storage, but it's still organized. And so I was going to do like maybe once a week, do a little storage segment on a different product. And then at the end, I could do my kind of whole craft room thing. So let me know if you'd be interested in that. Oh, Amy, yes, I would love to have everybody come over and have a glass of wine. That'd be awesome. I wish people lived in my area. I don't have a lot of crafting friends that come over. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I'm always open to new ideas. I love when you guys say that you want to do something differently or whatever. I think it was the poll that we just had. I can't remember what, it's escaping me at the moment, but people said they want me to do more stamping. And so, you know, for the card on Friday that I'm going to do Friday, I've got all stamping in it. So I really, really want to know what you guys like to see so that I can, you know, do what you guys want to see. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and maybe we'll do it again, and have a good rest of your weekend. See you later.